Okay, and here we are. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Hashtag Strong. I am so excited to be here tonight meeting with Carol, who is based in Singapore right now. Is that where you are, Carol?
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Sorry, you're in Sri Lanka. She is on a holiday. No, we are not jealous at all, Carol. Anybody out there, welcome to Hashtag Strong. This is season 3. And tonight we're going to be talking with Carol Glynn about confidence and women. It's one of my favorite topics. Definitely something that I believe has a huge impact on the well-being. For anyone watching this thinking, why are we only talking about women and mental health and confidence? I promise you we will have a very similar episode in the upcoming weeks where we do talk about men. And tonight we just want to be focusing on women, but we haven't forgotten any of our male participants. Just before we begin, I want to properly introduce Carol. Carol Glynn let me try that again. Carol Glynn is a finance coach and chartered accountant and the owner of, I'm going to say this properly, Conscience Finance Coaching. She is based in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. We have had a few conversations already. I'm extremely excited to be introducing everyone to Carol because not only is she a chartered accountant and a finance coach, she is a woman who is very, very confident talking about finance and spends her days helping women and young girls become more confident about their finance. So Carol, welcome to Hashtag Strong. I'm so excited that you took time away from your holiday to join me here this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my absolute pleasure. My favorite topics to talk about. So I'm more than happy to be here.
You know, Carol, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about the reality, the logistics of finance, but I also want to be talking about the emotional challenges that this conversation brings to many people. We are focusing on women tonight, but before we get into that really, really deep, vulnerable conversation, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the type of work that you do and how you help people when it comes to this conversation about money.
Okay. So my main passion, my reason for my business is to help women feel more empowered by money, to feel confident when it comes to managing their own money. I mean, I do have male clients as well who represent or who relate to what I say. But there's many reasons why I really focus on women, because I think that mainly because we're massively underserved in this area. And I think that there are more women out there than men who feel overwhelmed when it comes to managing their money. And to me, money is just a tool in our lives. It's a power that helps us drive our lives the way we want to live it. And because we're not confident with it, because we don't know what to do with it, and because we feel overwhelmed when it comes to sometimes just basic money management, then we give that power away. And we're losing out on something that can really help drive us forward in our lives, live our lives the way we want to. And we're putting that aside, or in most cases, we let someone else do that for us. So we give our power away. So what I do is help women take that power back and feel confident and excited and motivated about doing it.
You know, I know when we talked about the work that you do on a different platform, we were talking about how is it that women give this power away, and then we started having this conversation about the youth, and you know how much importance I place on working with the youth, and I'm thinking, having daughters myself, not being very confident about this conversation. I remember this conversation coming up several times in my marriage, and it was always a conversation. It was kind of an anxious feeling I had on the inside. And it wasn't that I wasn't managing my money, it was I didn't feel comfortable talking about money. And I remember being really young and watching my mom doing lots of calculating, and everything was always calculating. And I think that laid an impression on me. Now, when you're working with your clients who are men and women, do you talk about the habits that they have around money and the kind of an impact that it might have in other parts of their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, I think money is about mindset. You know, people say to me, I'm no good at money, I'm not good at maths, I'm not good with numbers. That's a piece of it, but it's actually a very small piece of it. It's more about mindset, and it's more about our values and how we feel about money. And that largely stems back to childhood experiences. So as you mentioned, you know, that image of your mother with a calculator, and that manifests and for people, it's very different. That might manifest for one person as a scarcity mindset, where they feel like there's never enough money. I mean, and at the end of the day, there is enough money for everyone. It's that's a different conversation about how we share it out, but having that feeling of there's never enough, and someone else, it might manifest in, you know what, there's never enough, so I'm going to blow it anyway. So one person might save a lot, be very careful with money. The person with the same experience, but it's coming out in their adult life in a different way, just seems to just spend money. No matter how much they earn, they never save it. They always feel like it's flowing through their fingers. So your mindset and your life experience when it comes to money and what we're exposed to really, really plays a massive part in how we feel about money. Sometimes, you know, we hear our parents saying things like money doesn't grow on trees, you know, and how that, you know, carries us with us throughout our lives. Or, you know, people pass comments on wealthy individuals, and they just kind of cause aspersions that maybe they're not a good person if they're wealthy. And therefore I subconsciously, you know, have clients who kind of push away wealth because they feel if I'm wealthy, I must be a bad person, therefore I can't be wealthy. And they don't aspire to make a lot of money or to have a lot of investments. So it's a very complicated one. But I think that how I manage it with my clients is it really bubbles up in conversation. So we talk about what's happening now. What are your habits right now? And it's amazing how once they feel comfortable, because as you alluded to, it's a very, very personal conversation. It's a very difficult one to have, especially with family members, because it's so emotional. There's so much shame and guilt and judgment often attached to it. But what I try to do is make sure that my clients know that this is, you know, I'm an independent person. I've seen it all before. And this is a safe space. And we talk a lot about, you know, their childhood experiences or their past experiences with money. For example, 2008. When, you know, there was the financial crash, that had a huge impact on a lot of people, and their mindsets changed from before that to after that, and not necessarily an experience they had themselves, but watching other people, and then subconsciously don't actually realize what that's doing on a daily basis.
So how does confidence translate in conversations about money? You know, when you are talking to clients, when you are talking to women and saying, you know, let's build your confidence, how does it translate? Is it something they should be doing? Is it something they should be seeing or saying? Or is it just, it is what it is and we kind of have to get on with it?
I think confidence is kind of separate to our mindset sometimes, because confidence is how I see with my clients, is with women, is how we've been made to feel about our abilities with money. So one statistic I often talk about is, you know, there a few years ago, a study was done and they reviewed media articles. So when it came to articles targeted at women versus articles targeted at men, it was all about, you know, money is power, investing, shows your strength, you know, strive for more, ask for that pay rise. And it's largely about, you know, investing and taking care of your family. Whereas for women, the two main things were curtail your shopping sprees and spend less on shoes, you know, and that's the limit of what we're exposed to, and that's what we're made to feel. So many of my clients come to me and say, I'm just no good with money. I just can't stop. I just don't know what to do. And there's that lack of confidence that stops them even trying. And to me, that's where we really fall down with girls, where we don't instill that confidence early on that you are absolutely have the same ability to manage money as your brother, your cousin, your friend, whoever your male counterpart is. And I find that just taking small steps, doing little things, you know, just thinking about your money, reading an article, read a blog, talk to a friend. Another thing is that when it comes to confidence is pretty much every client I deal with or I work with comes to me and says, I can't talk to anybody else. I'm too embarrassed. Everybody else seems to know. They're all in control of their money. They seem to know what they're doing and I don't. And I encourage people to find a friend they feel safe with, or a family member, just someone that they feel, you know, that they can be somewhat vulnerable with, and talk to them. And when it's a female, every time they come back to me and said, their friend, let's say, or their sister, whoever it might be, says essentially, I feel the same. I'm so glad you said that. I feel the same. And the relief that brings, that it's not just me, and that gives them a confidence boost, that it's okay. Like, it's not just me who feels like this.
So being an educator, I also wonder, is it a bad habit that we're just recycling and passing on to our children? How should we be educating young girls so that when they get, to become adults, that they're not struggling with a lack of confidence about money? How do we educate them?
I think as a mother, educate yourself first. Sort out, your own, and as in sort out, but, deal with your own mindset first. Get confidence in your own money management skills first. And then you'll have more confidence. And then, like you said, then you're setting a good example. Our children watch us. They learn more from what they see us doing than what we tell them. And once they see us and they're not seeing me sitting there with a calculator, or if they are, I'm talking to them about what's happening and instilling that positive kind of mindset in them, that even if we're going through a difficult time, but this is what we're doing, it's not the end of the world. But really, you can't do that really well until you sort out your own mindset, your own habits, and then they will absorb that. We know what kids are like. They'll just absorb. They watch what we do and they copy. So I think fill up your own cup first, and then you'll be better equipped to help your daughters and your sons. I mean, it's not just women.
No, it isn't. It really isn't women. When I think about mental health issues, particularly now through this pandemic, and as we're starting to see different countries around the world coming out of it, or at least it looks like we're coming out of it, we're now starting to kind of see two camps of people: those who have survived the pandemic, still employed and feeling like, okay, we can start taking holidays again. And then you have those who really didn't survive financially through that pandemic, and kind of looking at others and thinking, you're so lucky that you are employed. What can we do so that I heard you saying that, take control of your money, or, they're in control of their money. What should women be doing so that they do feel more in control? I know we talked about a couple of things, but let's kind of put it into context, top 5 daily habits, or things to be reading, or things to be doing, so that they can walk away from this interview and feel like, tomorrow I'm going to try something new.
Yeah. I think the number one thing, and it never has an initial positive reaction, is learn to budget. And when I say budget, I don't mean as in restraint, because most people, when I say, let's talk about budgets, when I ask, how does that make you feel? They say like shame, restraint, restriction. That means I can't spend, there goes my Starbucks coffee, whatever it might be. And for me, it's not that at all. I mean, sometimes that might need for a little while until we get back on our feet like that. If we've lost our job, we need to, look at what we can and can't do with the resources that we have. However, for me, it's a tool. And it's a life skill that really, really helps us, and it will instill the confidence, because you get so much clarity when you're budgeting. So I'd say the first thing is get clarity on your situation right now. And the best way to do that is to sit down and rip that Band-Aid off and look at your budget. Look at, for the last 3 months, where have I spent my money? What are my expenses? How much is my rent compared to my income? Just get full knowledge of what's happening. And I do this as one of the first things I do with my clients. And there is always major learnings in there, aha moments where they think, wow, this unconscious spending that we do sometimes, like that Starbucks. And for me, I love coffee. So you go in and, you buy one, you don't really want it because you're passing by, or you pick up a thing in the grocery store, or you go into a newsagent's and you end up picking, various things when you went in for one thing. And it's all those little things that add up. And then when you actually look at it, and it can be hard the very first times, it's very vulnerable for people, and they're terrified of it very often. But there's so much information in that. It will tell you so much about your mindset, about your habits, about where you're leaking money and you don't even realize it. And it'll tell you about your values when it comes to money. And very quickly, you will find ways where you'll think, I don't need to do that anymore. And if I'm in a situation where my income is not, as much as it used to be, or I'm feeling that restriction, you'll always find areas where you can quickly go, I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm comfortable with that. It doesn't feel like restraint. It doesn't feel like suddenly I can't go out with my friends for 6 months because there's no money there. So I would say get that clarity so you know where you are. It's like, if we want to go on a fitness regime or we want to run a marathon, you don't just start running. What do? You look at what's my fitness level now, you take your measurements, how is my diet, what do I need to do to get to where I want to be? And you can't do that until you know where you're starting. So, and I completely understand it is difficult. I mean, I've had people tell me things like when they go to the bank machine, no matter how much is in there, they're so terrified. They literally do this, type in the pin and just take the money because they don't want to see the balance that's there. I've had people tell me that, as part of the process with me is they send me their bank statements for the 3 months and I run the numbers for them. I put it into the budget for them. And they tell me they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning at the idea of even going into their bank accounts because they're terrified of what they see. But what I will say, and there are statistics behind this as well, that shows that actually for something like 70% of people, it's not only not as bad as they thought, they're actually wealthier than they thought. So we're putting ourselves under this pressure, this stress, this worry, when in actual fact, the reality, if we face up to it, isn't as bad. Or if it is, we know what to do now. We can make a plan. And, this applies to people who, like you said, some have lost their jobs maybe or had salary reductions or come into financial difficulties. And then the kind of other side of that is people who maintained their jobs and had a lower cost of living because they couldn't go out. And, almost that budget was imposed on them almost. But that can be difficult on both sides of that, because then you have also the shame and guilt of the person who has the money and they don't want to talk about it. And they also have fear because they've seen what's happened to their friends. They've seen what's happened to their family and they've absorbed that fear and they're afraid then to spend their money. They're afraid to do anything with it because they don't want to end up in a situation if they did lose their job. 6 months time, what if there's another COVID spike and they lose their job for whatever reason? So it's not just for those who, are feeling kind of restricted right now. It's for everyone. And the number one thing would be sit down and do it. Be brave and do it. I mean, obviously, this is something I help my clients with. It's the first thing we do, but you can do it with a friend. You can do it with a family member. You can do it completely by yourself. And go easy on yourself. Go easy on it because don't shame yourself. Don't blame yourself if there's things in there. This is not about pointing fingers. It's about just knowledge. And then on the knowledge piece, then there's so many blogs out there. There's so much information online. Thankfully now, actually, even specifically for women. So just read them and talk to other women about how they're feeling and what they're experiencing, because that will help build your confidence to move forward as well.
I'm listening to you talk about how women should be more comfortable talking about it. I'm just thinking, living in the UAE, there's so much peer pressure to go out and to eat out and to drink out and to wear expensive clothes and the cars that you drive. It's almost this peer pressure to look wealthier than you actually are. And for people that do want to save money, I wonder if the challenge is feeling like they're not fitting in, and that makes it more difficult for them. What do you say to clients who are telling you, you know what, Carol, I can't be home. I need to get out. I just can't stay home. And everyone goes out. Things are really costly and I have to maintain this lifestyle. What are some of your suggestions for, other than suck it up and, what are your values and what are your priorities? But it's really, I think sometimes it's about tweaking. It's not necessarily about cutting out. So how can they tweak so that they're not, we don't want people staying home and falling into depression because they're trying to save money. But at the same time, we do want them to feel more in control and have that confidence around money.
Exactly. And it's one thing I think where we've been failed when it comes to financial advice. There's too much of, like you said, just suck it up, just do it. And I've had clients come to me purely because they were quite relieved and hopeful because I was a woman, that they could relate easier to me because they went to male friends mainly or call it brothers, and the attitude was much like, just do it. Like they just don't, it's very kind of straightforward, just do it. And there's so much emotion attached to that. And I believe that if it's a bit like going on a 600 calorie a day diet, right? You're miserable. right? You might save money in the short term, but you can't sustain that. You can't live like that. And you lose everything around you. Like when that in a diet, you can't go out and eat with your friends. It's not sustainable, and it's actually not healthy. And it's the same when it comes to your money. And that's where getting that knowledge, like I mentioned, and the clarity about where your money is going, and then you prioritize. And it does come down to values. I mean, I've had clients who come to me and say like that, it's just Dubai is too expensive for me. I love it here, but I'm single and I don't want to be isolated. And I said I would never would suggest that, not at all. But that's clearly one of your values, and that's a priority for you. So then we make sure we put potentially on the need list rather than the want list a certain amount of socializing, because we need community. We need, especially at the moment, we need that connection with people. I've had one client, for example, who, when we talk about takeaways, there's the needs, how we talk about needs, wants, and savings and investing. So we say 50% of your income maximum goes towards your needs, 30% goes towards your wants, and 20% ideally to at least 20% to savings and investing. Most people would say takeaways are a want, right? This woman, she said no, because I live alone. I don't like cooking. I work long hours. I'm not going to start cooking. Yes, I know it's going to be cheaper, but it's just not what I'm going to do. And I said, okay, that's the need for you. So we build that in. And that's how you look at it. And that's where you take away the budgeting of a restraint. I need to cut away all the fun. No, you need to make space for the fun. And then, but yes, sometimes you have to have a balance. And I have found every single time we've had this conversation, people are motivated to reduce if they need to. So instead of going to brunch every weekend, they're saying, you know what, I don't feel good after it. I'm just doing it because I feel like I have to. And I didn't really have any goals for my money. But once they've set goals, they understand their values, they understand what's important to them. They feel like they have a balance of life alongside their financial goals. And they have goals that they're motivated about. And this is where I say there are no shoulds. Let's work to you. Personal finance is personal. So what do you want to achieve in your life, and what is important to you? Is that a fitness instructor that you want to pay for? Is that you want to go for brunch because that is your social outlet? You work long hours, 5 days a week, and that's what you enjoy. Let's look at how we can build that in while also reaching, towards your financial goals. And those financial goals are ones that you want, not that we should do, not that we feel like my mother told me I have to do, or my sister said it was the best idea, or my dad told me this, or my friends are doing this, so I feel like I should. No, what do you want? And if you really want that and you believe in it, then it's easier to say no to the things when you're prioritizing. That's going to go, well, I could spend 500 dirhams here, or I could keep that 500 dirhams, and that's going to get me to my goal 3 weeks earlier than I budgeted for. What do I want to do? And if you decide I'm going to go for that brunch, I'm going to pay 500 dirhams, and you know why, and your reasons are true for you, go do it and enjoy it. No guilt, no shame, no worry. Go and enjoy it. Because very often in those cases, we go and we say, and we don't really enjoy it. We're not in the present moment then, because we're worrying, I shouldn't do this. This isn't the best use of my money. If my parents knew this is where I'm spending my money, they wouldn't be happy. But so then there's no fun in that, go. Know what you're doing with your money, make your decisions, go enjoy it, and then move on. And you're still working towards your goals separately.
Amazing. Carol, I know you said, to help the youth, we really need to do this ourselves and get around. This could take a while, because you're working on those deeply seated insecurities and rebuilding a mindset, and this could take quite a while for a mother to really, or even a woman, to just kind of gain this kind of a confidence. Time is ticking and young people are watching. What can we do simultaneously? So a mother watching this right now, or an educator watching this right now, thinking, you know what, I don't really feel confident when we're talking about money, but I know that it's important that I teach my children. What can they do while they're building their own confidence?
I would say two things. One, to be mindful of your language around money in front of them and how you talk to them about money, because they will, like we said, they will watch you and absorb that. And that's part of your process too, because one of the things we need to do as we're changing our mindsets is catch ourselves, those subconscious moments when we we talk negatively about money, or we talk negatively about someone who has money, or the comments that we make, the reasons we give our kids for why they can't do something. Sometimes we just say, oh, look, we just can't afford it. And that might be just an excuse, an easy way to say no. But for them, that could be like, oh, we don't have enough money. And then that can have roots that will come out later in life. So kind of be careful of what you're saying. Try and keep it positive. Try and keep it open. And then talk to them. Just talk to them about and being honest, because part of the conversation like that I have is that we are not honest enough about money. Now, I'm not saying you need to talk to them, this is my salary, look at my payslip. No, but it's about, I talk to them about, you know what, we as women in our generation, for example, we didn't have the tools that I am now learning. And we didn't, this is the things that I experienced, and this is how it's manifested for me, and this is what I'm now learning. Do you want to know more about it? Do you have any questions? And it's okay not to know. How could we know if we weren't exposed to it? We weren't given the tools. We weren't taught in school. The books weren't there. It's okay not to know. And let's talk about it. Because if you start that open conversation at home, then that will feed out wider. Then maybe they'll go and talk to their friends. And then it filters out wider. So I think just being mindful of how we talk about money as we're going through the process, and then actually talk to them about the fact that you're going through that process in a healthy way, not that it's this concern, it's a worry. It's just, this is what I'm learning, and I'm learning a new skill, and I didn't have it before, and that's okay, but I'm doing it now.
I want to talk a little bit about, I think we're kind of skirting around the seriousness of money when somebody feels like they've lost control of their finances, when the credit card debt is mounting, when the phone calls are coming in, and you have to start paying back your debt and you can't afford it. How do you help somebody? I'm feeling claustrophobic just thinking about it. I have met people, I've heard stories about situations like this, and I've actually seen people take their lives. I've heard of people taking their lives all over the world because of money. So how, to somebody going through this right now, for them listening, thinking, this is just too much, I can't, is there a stage where, I know back home people would declare bankruptcy and it's kind of like cleaning the slate and starting all over again. But in some parts of the world, that's not an option. What do you tell a client who's drowning in debt and doesn't know how to get themselves out? Is there help? Is there something they can do?
It really is heartbreaking, and it is a serious problem in this region. It really is a serious problem. We're doing people a massive disservice with the lack of support that is there. I mean, I write, there's, if in the national newspaper, every Wednesday, there's what we have, the debt panel, which is amazing. And people can write in anonymously and explain their situation, asking for help. And it's all, of course, it's always debt. It's the debt panel, but it's pretty much always credit card debt. And people just feeling desperate. And like you said, they're getting harassed where the banks are calling them. There is no empathy. There is no compassion for their situation sometimes from these phone calls that they get. And it's extremely stressful. And we know there's legal consequences in the UAE for not paying your debt. We do now have recently the concept of personal bankruptcy, which is helpful. But you know what, that has a long-term impact on someone's financial well-being as well. It's not just as simple as filing for bankruptcy and you're done. It has a long-term impact. And it's heartbreaking and it's hard. Sometimes some of the stories that come to me and the clients that come to me, and I know it's a long road, but what I will say is there is always a way out. There is always a way out. And I think not talking about it, it's a bit like initially, I mean, it's not, comparison really, but not talking about it makes this always, no matter what we're dealing with, makes the problem seem bigger. The minute we talk to somebody else and find someone who we can just be vulnerable with, I think immediately feel like, okay, now maybe I can start getting my head above water. And sometimes you just have to make extremely difficult decisions and have that situation where you have a period of time and socialize, or there isn't much of the wants in your budget, just to get yourself above water. And the banks do tend to be, once you show them that you want to pay back, they will eventually. It might take a little bit of, proof where you've paid off as much as you can over a period of time, and they will start to help you. There's me, obviously, who I help people through this, because there's many ways to approach debt, which again, we don't know, we're not educated on. It's not just as simple as putting money to it. There's many ways to approach it, and talk to someone who can help you think through it, because doing that by yourself is extremely stressful. And money is the number one cause of stress in the world. And that's stress when we have debt, and even stress for when we have, I had one lady recently tell me she wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning because she has a substantial, I won't say how much, but a substantial amount of cash sitting in the bank. And she knew she should have invested it. She didn't do enough with it. It worries about her having it here. She doesn't know where to put it. And that's causing her a massive amount of stress. So, but she said just talking about it, already she said her shoulders were lifting. And it's the same when I've had one client who again felt like she was never going to get out of the debt. It just seemed to be growing and growing. And this is the problem with credit card debt, because the regulation isn't there, let's say, to protect consumers when they're being sold. And people find themselves innocently in debt with credit cards because they don't understand how they work. And then it becomes this massive mountain that just seems to be growing. And what I do is we sit down and we go, right, let's look and make a plan. And that plan could be 6 months, that plan could be 3 years. But I think having a plan, a light at the end of the tunnel, something to work towards will help. And every single time I've worked with a client to do this, they've actually paid it off sooner than the plan, because we still try and build in a life of some, joy in that period of time. But they find themselves so motivated, and they can see the difference. They can see like that snowball growing, that they end up saying, right, for 6 months of sacrifice, I will gain myself maybe 1 year in the long run, because the more you pay off up front, the quicker you will actually pay that debt. The more front loading you can do, the better. And they end up doing it faster, because that light is there. They have something to work towards, and they have someone to talk to. And I think having someone to talk to is important.
Amazing.
Tough.
Let's talk about peer pressure a little more, because I think it's a big thing. So you mentioned talking to people around you. What about making an audit of friendships and an audit of the people that you surround yourself with? Is that a conversation that you have when you are sitting down with your clients, and that, okay, let's not just look at where you're spending your money. Let's look at the kind of relationships you have around you that is kind of triggering the need to keep up with the Joneses, as they say.
Yeah. The phrase where they say is it the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with? So in every aspect of your life, it's important to surround yourself with people who are like-minded and supporting of your values and your goals. Because if you have someone who doesn't respect, maybe you've made changes and you're saying, I'm not going to go out every Thursday night, or I'm not going to go to brunch, or I can't afford, or not that I can't afford, I'm choosing to use my money differently. I'm not going to do that activity every month anymore. And someone who's trying to put pressure on you and not supporting you and not respecting you. And it's important to put up boundaries and explain to them. And sometimes, yes, you lose relationships, and that's really unfortunate, and that can be really difficult, especially somewhere like the UAE, because as expats, our friends are our family. It's hard, and that is our outlet, that is our connection, that is our community. So it can be difficult, but I will also say the vast majority I found where their friends are like, what are you doing? What are you questioning? And then they can see the difference after a few months. They then come to them and say, actually, what are you doing? Can you tell me? I want to learn what it is. I see the changes that you're making. Actually, I've thought about it. I want that too. That happens a lot as well. But you do have to be prepared. It's no different. If you want to make any positive change in your life, sometimes our relationships fall by the wayside. And that's a fitness regime, or drinking less, or, whatever it is, your social circle may change, and that's tough, but you'll find you attract other like-minded people. And once you're convinced of why you're doing it, it does make it a little bit easier.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I try to remind myself when I'm tempted to do things, or, when I'm tempted to spend more than I'm supposed to, I kind of remind myself, you know what, at some point you're going to want to go on a vacation or retire one day, and these
Yeah.
moments are going to start to creep up on you. Is that something that you think people should be spending more time thinking about, or are we just supposed to
Yeah.
kind of put that to the side? Is the, I think the saying used to be save money for a rainy day, but really the reality is just have enough money so that you don't have to worry, will I survive if I lost my job for, the next few months or up to a year? Is
Yeah.
that something that you hear a lot of, or is that just a negative mindset that we shouldn't be focusing on?
No, I think that's a very positive thing. And like I mentioned, I don't believe in shoulds. Personal finance is very personal, and every person's financial goals or life goals, really their life goals, need to be specific to them, because otherwise we'll give up. It's not motivating. And when something tempting comes along, it's forgotten and we give up. However, my one and only should is that emergency fund, that sanity fund, that walk away fund, whatever it is you want to call it. For me, that is number one when you start looking at your finances first, because that is your financial safety net. That is your short-term security. And that is what helps me sleep at night, so that I know, if my income is zero tomorrow. And with COVID, we think we've learned it's possible, right? For some people who had very secure jobs that never would have worried, suddenly completely out of their control. What do you do if you don't have a set amount of money that you can fall back on? And what that does is it gives you a sense of financial security, and it gives you a sense of freedom and choices. Because the thing about money is, if we feel like we don't have enough, and we're constantly relying on our income, our income's in the future, right? It's unreliable. It's not, it doesn't exist right now. But if we have money sitting aside that we know if we need to, it's there, it's freeing. It clears our mind and allows us to make more clear judgments when it comes to money, which is kind of, I suppose it's like your foundation. And what it means is that you can, if you lose your job, you can pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay for groceries, pay your kids' school fees for whatever period of time that you decided is the right amount for you. And it's minimum of 3 months of your expenditure, we say, up to maybe this is 3 to 6 months, but depending on yourself. Again, if you've got a lot of responsibilities like me, I've got 3 young kids, school fees, rent, I have 2 boys and they eat a lot of fruit that costs a lot, so I have to make sure that I have a lot of grocery emergency funds sitting there. But it means that if my income completely dries up, I don't have to panic. I'm not immediately having sleepless nights. It gives me the space to think about, right, what do I do next? I have enough money to take us home to Ireland if that's what I need to do. I have enough money to pay for me, I like 9 months, but I'm quite risk adverse. So a lot of people might say that's too much, but I've got 9 months that their schools are paid for, the rent is paid for, while I figure this out. What is my next move? And can you imagine the difference in that versus there's no money? I have nothing to fall back on. I get my last salary. What do I do? And you end up then taking jobs, maybe that if you get a job, you take any job. You take one that you're not happy in. If you've got time to breathe, you can maybe wait and find the right job, not just any job. And that is my one should. Absolutely have that rainy day fund, emergency fund, the sanity fund, whatever. Some people call it in a polite way, my walk away fund. So that, if you want to leave your job and you've got time, or some people just say it's, if I need to go home, I can get me and my family on the plane, I can pay for it and I don't have debt, and I can do it. And I think that's grounding, and that foundation is very, very important. And then build on it.
Very empowering as well. Let's talk about relationships and money. Many times, or very often, we see that women have to take time off because they're having children, and they they want to be able to be at home with the children for a certain amount of time. And then suddenly they find themselves being dependent on their spouse for money. And at times we also hear that women will stay in unhealthy relationships because of fear of leaving because of their financial dependence. What do you suggest to a young woman out there, or anyone, man, woman, who is thinking of kind of putting all their money in one little bucket and dividing it and using it, and then somebody feeling like, is that a healthy thing to do? Do you recommend that couples share their money? Do you recommend that couples divide their money? Should we maintain our independence? What would be the most empowering suggestion that you think would work for, of course, there's different cases, but on
Yeah.
average, what would be the most empowering suggestion?
I think we should always, as men and women, because in some relationships it's actually the women who control all of the finances. But either way, we should always have access to money within the relationship. Ideally, have a bank account in our own name, and that we have money there, and that maybe your emergency fund or an amount that as a couple you decide this is what you have and this is what you have, and that's for us to spend, and then the family money is together. But whatever it needs to be, work it out between yourselves, with respectfully, with full communication, vulnerability. Talk to your partner about why you feel the way you do about money, and have access to it. Because I have seen women who found themselves in outside relationships all of a sudden, and they never had access to the money, and they trusted their partners. There was never any reason to believe. And the most actual scenarios is they just had no interest in it. He's better at it than me. This is the usual. He's better at it than me. He knows what he's doing. That's boring. I don't want to do that. And it's fine. But actually, when it came to separation, that's when the cracks really started to show, and they felt so vulnerable because they didn't know what was in the relationship. Suddenly they had no access to it, and they had to go asking in an already extremely stressful and painful situation, asking for money to live. And I would say in that situation, have your own separate. But when it comes to what's the right way to handle it as a couple, for me, I don't think there is one right way. It's what works for you as a couple. So I have couples who keep them completely separate. Like their salaries go into completely separate bank accounts. They each, an agreed amount goes into a shared account that pays for the shared family expenditure. And then what's left, their own money, it's, as far as they're concerned, it's none of the other person's business. And that's absolutely fine because they've both agreed to it. Neither of them is feeling controlled. Neither of them is feeling restricted. Neither of them, both have felt heard and are comfortable with what is agreed. Other couples have gone the other way, where they say everything goes into one bank account and then it's just a free for all for the family. And again, that's fine too, once both feel that they have equal access to that money, once they respect each other when it comes to spending and how that money is used, and once there's an open dialogue. I mean, in that situation especially, I would recommend looking at it on a monthly basis as a family. And we talk about getting the kids involved. One Saturday afternoon a month, we sit down and we have a family meeting and we talk about finances, age appropriate, obviously, but we talk about finances and what have we spent as a family for the last month, and what do we want to do for next month, and what have we got coming up, and what are we going to save for. There's full transparency, there's openness, and no one is hiding anything, because we can talk about, I contributed to an article recently about financial infidelity, which can be as painful, not as painful, but it can feel, as much as a betrayal as other forms of infidelity, because there's that hidden secret. And especially when it means the money is gone. Usually it's gambling or debt, and next thing the money is gone and the other partner had no idea. And you're right, it is the number of the 3 top reasons women specifically do not leave relationships, abusive relationships or toxic relationships, is finances, because they feel they can't support their children, they can't support themselves, and they feel trapped. And it's again, that's us giving our power away, right? There's so much money in that power, in that money, so there's so much power in that money, and then we've given it away. And more times than not, we actually give it away. It's not taken. That happens too, of course. There is controlling relationships, financial control, financial abuse is a serious problem. Again, it's not talked about enough, but actually in the vast majority of cases, we as women, we give it away. You handle that, I don't want to deal with it. And then what happens?
And I think it puts a lot of pressure on their spouse as well, whether it be a male or a female. When the other person is saying, you deal with this, that's quite an amount of pressure to put on one person, because suddenly they're not only responsible for making sure that, the expenses are paid, but they're also responsible for making sure that there's a nest egg, and they're responsible for doing all of that budgetary. So it has to be an immense amount of pressure on the other partner as well, which then, maybe they make decisions because they think they're doing it for the right reason, and then debt starts to climb, and
Yep.
it gets really bad. So would you suggest then that I heard you saying having a family meeting? How do you go about starting a family meeting like this when you've never done it before? And I think the conversation, because I wonder how the other spouse would take it if out of nowhere a woman starts saying, I really want to have a conversation about money. Do you think that's a triggering conversation if you've
Yeah.
never had it before? How do you suggest the woman should approach that type of conversation?
Oh, that absolutely can be a triggering conversation, especially if it comes out of nowhere. That can seem quite suspicious, right? And I would say when it comes to family, make sure as the parents, you have gone through your piece first, and that you have a healthy relationship with the budgeting for the family before you introduce the children to it. The last thing they need to see is you fighting or tension between you when it comes to money. And it's so true. Like I've had like friends, the husband has come to me and said, I really wish my wife would be more involved, because I try and sit her down and I try and tell her, this is because his kind of thinking is, we don't know what's going to happen on any day. If something happens to me, suddenly I'm no longer in the picture. What is she going to do? She's dealing with the children. She's dealing with the grief. She's dealing with that. The last thing I want for her is to also have to worry about money, because it's already a block. She's already not thinks overwhelmed, doesn't want to deal with it. And he said, and it's also a lot of responsibility for me, because like you said, I'm making all the decisions here. And these are major decisions, long-term decisions for our family. And if it goes wrong, it's very easy then to point fingers, isn't it? Why did you do that? And most of the time it's with absolute best intention, but it's very easy from the outside looking in with hindsight going, that wasn't the right decision. Why did you do that? And that causes major issues within relationships. So I would say, if it's a case for, let's say, an example, as a woman, you're listening to this, and I'm so glad I have had women in these talks come to me and they joke and they say, like, I'm literally going to stand up and go and talk to my husband right now about this because I'm motivated. And that's what I want, but maybe just take a breath first and don't just barge in and you'd be like, whoa, where's this coming from? Take a breath and think about what it is you want to achieve, and then talk to him honestly and say, I know I need to understand a bit more about our finances, but I'm nervous because I feel vulnerable, because I haven't done this before, because this is how it makes me feel. I get anxious. I feel like I can't do it. Many women tell me, I'm afraid you're going to think I'm stupid. Because I don't know what to do. You seem to know what you're doing. I don't want you to judge me. I don't want that vulnerability. It's hard. It is very hard, but try and be honest as you can, and softly, like, don't just open the door and go, tell me about the money. Some men might react well to that, but I know if that was me on the other side of that door, I'd go, whoa, what's what all of a sudden. And again, no shame, no blame. When he in this example is explaining to you what's happening, this is what's going, these are the decisions I've made. Like I said, from the outside looking in, it can be very easy to start going, but why did you do that? And shouldn't you have done that? And someone else told me that they've done this. Why haven't you done this? That's not going to help. Let's keep it the open-ended questions. Okay, tell me more about that. What was the situation there? Help me understand why you made that decision, so that, be open-minded, and no shoulds, no blame, no pointing fingers. It's not an audit. This is you learning and becoming, a partnership when it comes to the finances.
And I think by doing that, suddenly both partners are more consciously aware of where they're spending.
Yes.
And they're aligned with how they're spending and why they're spending as well. I mean, we could talk about this forever. I know we're coming right to the end of our conversation. If you could leave women and young women with one empowering thought, something that could really make tomorrow the beginning of a new day, what would that be?
I think you can, might sound cheesy, but you absolutely can do it. And this is, think of it as self-care. You earn money, you work for money. We don't like to admit it, but we do, right? Why else? We work for passion sometimes, we enjoy our jobs, but we're doing it for money. And that money has so much power to drive your life forward in the way that you want to. So, and you can absolutely do it. It's not just about the numbers, it's about mindset. So use that power to drive your life forward in the way that you want to. And it can be baby steps. It doesn't have to be straight into investing in Bitcoin on day one. Absolutely. By the way, don't do that. Not on day one. It's baby steps. Open up your bank account, talk to a friend, just do something. It will change your life. I promise it will change your life.
That's it. Just do it. It's like anything we've ever had to do. You just have to take that first step and just do it. So get comfortable having those conversations. Surround yourself by people who will empower you to have those conversations and support and align with your values, and then just get started and just do it. So if you're watching this right now and struggling to really understand how to work with your money and feeling that you're lacking that confidence, you definitely want to be reaching out to someone who can help you. Carol, how can we find you if we do want to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on most active on either LinkedIn under my name, Carol Glynn, or Instagram at Conscious Finance Coaching. And I offer one-on-one coaching for people. And I'm also about to relaunch my group workshops. So if you want to join in with other women on the same journey, the group workshops are a really great way to go. But just message me and we can chat. I offer a free 20-minute call to anyone who'd like to chat about a particular issue or how it is that they can work with me. And all of the information is there on Instagram or my website.
I love it. And you know what? Just a thought that came to my mind is if your girlfriend is going to have a birthday, or if you want to buy this person a present, why not just buy them an hour with a finance coach? See that your money is actually having a return on investment in their lives. It's an excellent way to be supporting your friends, I think. And if you do have a friend trying to save money, don't give them a hard time. Support them through that. And maybe that'll rub off in a positive way. So thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for being here with me tonight. And thank you to everybody for watching. If you're watching the replay of this episode, please feel free to reach out directly and ask us any questions. And I'm sure that Carol will be able to support us with some of those answers. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you next week when we bring another incredible guest to Strong.
Thank you.